We are the weirdos, mister.
Welcome back to the Final Ghouls of Horror. I'm Jeremy.
I'm Holly.
And I'm Al.
We're three people who love horror and are coming at it from different perspectives of who we are, as well as very different levels of experience with the genre, which we're always excited to talk about. And this week we're taking a look at the 2016 supernatural horror film, The Autopsy of Jane Doe.
Subject is in her mid to late 20s. Hair brown.
Flash flood warning now.
Eyes gray. First, they bound her. Then they ripped out her tongue, poisoned her, paralyzed her, forced her to swallow the cloth. What is that? Dad?
So, Elle, what is your history? Were you familiar with The Autopsy of Jane Doe at all before now?
Insofar that I was aware of autopsies, the procedures, and that unidentified women at crime scenes are labelled as Jane Doe, that is about the extent of it.
Okay, fair enough. And that's not necessarily going to be surprising because this wasn't exactly a blockbuster film. Let's put it that way. Holly, how about you? Were you familiar with this at all? Was this ever on your radar?
It was a while back. I think I saw the trailer come out. When you mentioned it, I was like, right, that was on my list a while back. But I didn't know much about it, and I really prefer to go into movies without knowing much about it.
Yeah, for sure. For my part, I knew about this film. I didn't see it until I want to say 2019, 2020, something like that. It might have been a pandemic watch. Partially because, like you, I had heard the name of the movie and I got it confused with, you know how there are a bunch of The Exorcism of this? Like The Exorcism of Emily Rose. Or there's another one, oh, Taking of Deborah Logan is another one. All of these horror films that have this very specific format. I just kind of lumped it in with all of those and I didn't know the difference until I watched them. Most of them are actually really good, as it turns out. Taking of Deborah Logan is really great. Exorcism of Emily Rose is great. But generally, they're actually pretty good. But this one, I didn't know what it was about until I watched it. And again, that was probably like 2020. I do want to say it was a pandemic watch. And since then, I don't think I rewatched it until I rewatched it for this. But it did become something where I started recommending it to people. Because, spoiler alert, I really like this movie. So, yeah, Elle, why don't you give us a little bit of the production history around this movie?
Yep. So, The Autopsy of Jane Doe is directed by André Øvredal from a script by Ian Goldberg and Richard Nang. Øvredal is best known for his found footage film of Troll Hunter. It sort of put him on the map, and coming off its success, he said that he wanted to prove that he could do more than those kinds of films. So he told his agents to find him a, quote, pure horror script, end quote, after being inspired by seeing The Conjuring, and they brought him The Autopsy of Jane Doe, which had previously appeared on the Blacklist. Now, for those not familiar, the Blacklist is a survey done of studio and production company and executives of the most liked unproduced screenplays. Many big-name movies have appeared on the Blacklist, from The Menu and Promising Young Women to I, Tonya, The Hunger Games, Zombieland, David Fincher's Zodiac, and many, many more. Øvredal has said that the actress Olwen Kelly, who plays Jane Doe, was the first person that they interviewed for the role, and that he instantly knew that she was the right choice. Part of the reason for her casting was that she was very knowledgeable of yoga and had a background as a model, which helped in her controlling her body and breathing. While there is some prosthetic work on display, Kelly plays the body for most of the film. The reason is that Øvredal wanted audiences to connect with the body on a human level. The movie was filmed in Kent and London in the UK in early 2015, and it released on the 21st of December in 2016 after premiering at the Toronto International Film Festival that September. Critics have mostly liked it with an 86% average score on Rotten Tomatoes, but it didn't get a significant US release. However, it did release overseas, where it then made $6.2 million, and mostly has found its audience on home viewing. Some fun facts: Martin Sheen was originally cast as Tommy, but pulled out due to scheduling conflicts. Øvredal spoke about Kelly in an interview with EW, saying it was the most grueling role to play, actually. She had to lie there on a slab for maybe 8-10 hours a day for weeks on end, and it was a cold marble table. She didn't say a word, she just lay there and was so amazing with everybody, and she made everyone calm. Because it's kind of an awkward situation, with the nudity and everything. Her personality made everyone relax. The song that plays on the radio is Open Up Your Heart and Let the Sunshine In, as performed by the Cowboy Church Sunday School. The version used is the 45 RPM recording, played at 33 and one third, and if you understand what that means, it's time to take your back medication.
I do understand what that means, and you're not wrong. It is probably time to take some back medication.
Look, you and me both, man.
Yeah. Basically, it means it's playing it slower, so it sounds creepier. And it sure sounds creepy.
For the modern audience, imagine Nightcore, except in reverse.
Yep. Yep. All right, so before we get into the plot synopsis, a little bit of a content warning for the film and probably what we're going to be discussing. This movie has a pretty significant amount of medical horror and gore. There's a lot of dissection. There is a scene of violence to an animal, and there is lots of nudity, albeit of an entirely non-sexual nature. So, Holly, what's this movie about?
We open with the police investigating the crime scene of a multiple homicide. There are no signs of forced entry, and it appears the victims were trying to get out of the house. An unidentified, half-buried corpse of a woman is found in the basement and labeled a Jane Doe. We then cut to the coroner, Tommy Tilden, and his son Austin, who has been helping him out ever since his mother passed. Examining the corpse of a burn victim, Tommy tells his son to stop asking why the person died. Their job is just to determine the cause of death. Austin's girlfriend Emma shows up and asks to see some of the corpses. She asks what the bell is on the ankle of a corpse, and Tommy explains that there used to be a time when it was hard to tell a comatose victim from a corpse, so they would put a bell on them which would let them know if they were still alive. Austin and Emma start to leave to go to the movies when the sheriff brings in the Jane Doe. Austin tells Emma that he wants to stay and help his father and she should come back later. When they begin to examine the body, they are confused. Time of death is impossible to determine due to lack of rigor mortis, and the blood still flows in the veins when they cut her open, while the cloudiness of her eyes suggests that she's been dead for several days. Her wrists and ankle bones are shattered. Her tongue has been cut out. One of her molars is missing. Her lungs are blackened as though she suffered third-degree burns. And Jimson weed, a paralyzing agent native to New England, is found in her stomach. As they are examining her, the radio begins to change stations and play an old song, Open Your Heart and Let the Sun Shine In. While in the hallway, Austin thinks he sees someone in the mirror, but there's no one there. He then finds Stanley, his mother's old cat, mortally wounded. Tommy mercifully kills the cat and incinerates the corpse. Continuing the autopsy, they find the woman's missing tooth wrapped up in a piece of cloth in her stomach. The cloth has Roman numerals, letters, and an odd diagram. Similar symbols are found drawn on the inside of her skin. The lights in the room suddenly explode, and they realize the other corpses are missing. They attempt to leave, but the elevator doesn't work, and a fallen tree has blocked the only exit. They go to the office where Tommy tries to call the sheriff, but the phone breaks up and goes dead. That is when they begin to hear the soft ringing of a bell. They barricade the door as something tries to get in. Then when Tommy goes to the bathroom, something unseen attacks him. Austin believes this is all the work of the Jane Doe, and they go back to the examination room, planning to cremate the corpse, but the door locks. Austin hacks it with an emergency axe. Through an opening, he sees one of the missing corpse. They decide to set the corpse ablaze in the examination room. The fire quickly spreads. Tommy puts it out, but discovers the body has not burned. Then the elevator reactivates. Tommy and Austin again attempt to escape, believing that they are being followed by a corpse. But the doors of the elevator will not close. Panicked, Tommy uses an axe against what he believes is one of the animated corpses, only to realize that it was Emma who had come back to meet him. Certain that the Jane Doe has been preventing them from discovering the true cause of her death, they return to the examination room. They discover the body's neurons remain active, meaning she is biologically still alive. Further examination of the cloth determines the markings refer to Leviticus 20:27, which condemns witches, and the year 1693, the date of the Salem witch trials. Tommy reasons that in their attempt to punish a witch, the Salem authorities instead transformed an innocent woman into a witch, rendering her immortal and allowing her to feel all of the pain that her body endures, even though she appears dead. Tommy then offers himself to the corpse as a sacrifice, hoping she will spare Austin. His ankles and wrists shatter, mimicking the corpse's wounds, and as the wounds are inflicted on Tommy, the corpse's own wounds begin to heal, and her eyes return to their original color. As Tommy reaches for a knife to cut out his own tongue, Austin stabs his father in the chest to end his misery. Believing he hears the sheriff outside, Austin approaches, but when the sheriff begins singing the song that they heard earlier, he realizes the voice is another hallucination. Then, startled by a sudden vision of Tommy's corpse, Austin trips over the railing and falls to his death. The police arrive the next morning and are confused by another crime scene. The corpse, showing no signs of trauma, is taken to Virginia Commonwealth University. During the ambulance ride, the radio spontaneously turns on once again, playing Open Your Heart and Let the Sun Shine In, as the corpse's toe twitches.
God, I love this movie. Uh I really do. I will say I don't think it is a perfect movie and we'll get into that. But I just want to hear just top level sort of immediate reaction. Elle, what did you think of this film? Just like again, top level thoughts on it.
It's weird. It's kind of in that space of movies that I don't feel has a full movie in it.
Mhm.
It's like it has acts one and two and then ends. It's like, okay, where's act three?
That's interesting. It definitely feels like a full movie to me.
Yeah, it was just like some of the, I guess, some of the scares, I guess we'll
Mhm.
call them. It's like they didn't really land.
Okay, fair enough.
Maybe I think what it was is the framing of it as an autopsy. I was in that more clinical mindset.
Right.
So when a lot of the more supernatural elements come in, it's like, yep, okay, file that away.
Mhm.
Moving on. Where's the left ventricle at? Yes, let's get a look at that. Oh, yep,
Mm.
the fire is exploding. Yep, mark that down.
Yep, legit. That's fair.
Yeah, I think that's just where my mind went. Is that okay? Yes, we've had the medical part of it. Now, where is the actual movie third act part? Nope, credits. Weird. Okay.
Fair enough. Holly, what about just sort again, sort of
All right.
top level?
I'm going to argue completely with Elle here. I think this is a fantastic, complete movie from start to finish. It is very much my style of things. That said, I did make the intelligent choice because I like to work with clay and stuff while I'm watching the movies. I set down the X-Acto knife right when the jump scares were starting, which I think is very important because I probably would have ended up in the ER had I not. But I just loved it from start to finish. I've been thinking about it since. I jumped out of my skin when Austin opened the door to the office in the middle of it, and he had to calm me down.
Fair enough. Yeah. I don't remember what I will be honest, I don't remember what my initial reaction to the movie was. It was probably about 5 years ago, which let's be honest, that
Hmm.
was 2020, so it feels like 10 years ago.
So there may have been a couple of other things happening to kind of distract.
Maybe, yeah.
Maybe. Hmm. Who
Maybe
can say?
just possibly. But I do remember really liking it and being really sucked into it and intrigued until it got to the ending. And then I was like, this is my shit. This is 100% my
Hmm.
kind of movie. And hell yes. I think it does a really good job of being jump scary in an effective way because we all know jump scare movies that are not effective, overdo it or oversell it or too much obvious when it's going to happen. I think this does it right and doesn't rely on those. There's a lot more going on here than that. But yeah, so getting into the specifics of the movie, we don't have a lot of characters in this movie. We have a few people that we see very very briefly. We have the sheriff, we have Emma, but really this is, I would call it a three-hander, but it's a two-hander and a corpse. And I will have a lot to say about Olwen Kelly and Jane Doe, but specifically the main active characters in this are Austin and Tommy. And they are the relationship that is really important to this. So, Elle, how well does this father son relationship work for you?
It stands out as like one of the showpieces. I guess for obvious reasons, there's very limited characters to focus on, but like it stands even above the horror elements for it for me
Hmm.
because it is a very, like, this is going to be the right word. It is a very pure version of that relationship.
Right.
Not pure as in like all good and wholesome and everything, but like more distilled, like refined, crystallized. It's like that is the definitive father son kind of relationship experience.
Right.
It's like you could put that exact structure in any field. Like it doesn't have to be morticians, and it would work just as well, I feel.
Yes, absolutely. I very much agree with that. And I think part of the reason that it is so pure and distilled, because we only see what this arguably 4 or 5 hour period, obviously cut down to a 90-minute movie, but we only see this short period for them. So we really do get to focus on their relationship. And yeah, that's entirely fair.
Because it's like we've seen other movies and TV shows and other media where it's like, oh, the overbearing father and the rebellious teen son, or the Leave It to Beaver, everyone is happy and loves each other. It's like, no,
Hmm.
those are types of relationships, but not everything goes to those extremes one way or the other. Basically, everything is that sort of happy medium.
Yeah,
And this is like the most distilled, concentrated version of that you could do, I think.
I agree. I think it is you're right. It's not a toxic relationship. It's not two
Saccharine.
people who have, yeah, it's not saccharine. It's not two people who have nothing in common. Like you said, the super rebellious son and the military father or something like that. That's a big part of why there are large parts of this father son relationship that work very, very well for me.
If you were to put it on a scale, this would be
Hmm.
the zero, whereas the toxic relationship is a -10, and the
Right.
the pure-hearted goody one is a +10. It's like this is the zero that you base everything off.
Absolutely.
You tweak the scale as needed for like your particular narrative, but you always
Yep.
start at this zero. This is how strong it feels to me.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think A big part of that, I think the characters are written very well, but I do think a big part of that are the actors. I think that Emil Hirsch and Brian Cox are doing a really wonderful job, both individually and against each other, or opposite each other is a better way to put it. It is very, very easy to believe them as father and son because, like you said, it's a very grounded, authentic, real feeling relationship. I think Cox in particular puts a lot into making that believable, as well as sort of the mentor protege relationship that they have. That's stuff that I really like. I will say there are parts of it that don't necessarily work quite as well for me, and that's not them, but the things outside them, the things outside of how they directly relate to each other, I don't think work as well. I'm talking about basically the back history with the mother character. I'm using the term character very generously here, but the backstory involving the mother, and there's a whole little dialogue between Austin and Emma about how Austin is
Yeah,
planning to
I
leave
noticed that.
that doesn't really go anywhere.
I thought that was going to come up later when they were barricaded in the office. I
Hmm.
thought they were going to have that talk about him not wanting to be there.
The heart to heart.
Yeah, and then when they get to that point, or I guess this takes place in the elevator, but still, when we get to that point, it's, oh, here's time to drop in the backstory about the mother who had depression and committed suicide, which also
Hmm.
kind of comes out of nowhere. I mean, it provides a little insight into how these characters, why these characters sort of relate to each other the way they do. And it feels like it's there for the theme. Like, I guess I'd say I get what they're going for because the tagline of the movie is everybody has a secret. And every character in this has a secret. And the movie is kind of all about the internal trauma and how someone looks fine on the surface, but obviously there's a lot more going on underneath. We see that obviously with Jane Doe's body. I just don't think the execution for that part was quite there. And it kind of felt to me like this, well, we can't have them just talk about a dead body for 90 minutes. So let's throw in some conflict about him potentially leaving and a dead mom. And I think I like the idea. It's not a super major flaw, but I think it could have been executed slightly better. Outside of that, I think the relationship is great and it manages to carry a movie that is basically all the dialogue is between these two characters, which is not easy to do. Yeah, Holly, how about you? Obviously, talked about that part of it. Beyond that, how did the relationship between these two work for you?
Well, I'm going through a little bit of this myself with, losing my mom back in November,
Right.
and I'm an only child. My father and I have always been really close, and I'm right now, like, that's a big part of my life is making sure he is okay, being there for him, helping him. Thank goodness he isn't a mortician, is all I can say though, because, because that's where I'm out. Um, sorry, but no.
It's like, Dad, I
Um,
love you. I'll help you move. I will not help you move a body.
yeah. Yeah, but I think so. I did relate to it. I don't believe they needed to do the storyline with the mother's depression. It could have
Hmm.
simply been mom died a couple years ago. I'm helping dad out. It could be as ambiguous as that.
Right.
I don't think any of that's really needed. I think it's not a long movie. It has a main premise, and you could just stick to that.
Yep.
I think the elevator scene could be them trying to figure out more of what happened to this Jane Doe, because there is a huge mystery there.
Hmm. Absolutely. Or it could have been, again, pick a lane in terms of is it Austin is planning to leave
Hmm.
or dead mother? Because
Yes.
both of those feel like halfway developed ideas.
So I think that you could do both. You just need to focus in on it a bit more.
Yes.
Because I am going to push back a little bit against both and say like the mother depression angle did help the characterization. Like it felt
Mm-hmm.
necessary to explain parts of it. Because on one hand, you have the father who is burying himself in work, and then on the other, you have the son is like, "I want to leave, but I can't." There's like, this is the something that's keeping me here.
Right.
So I think if you cut to that elevator scene and it's a little bit more obvious that slightly more time has passed, then it feels maybe a little bit more genuine where it's like, okay, now we've had time. It's like we are going to be able to talk about this because nothing's going to happen immediately. And yeah, then it's like, okay, maybe the father wanted to leave as well because this is a long running family business. It's like 3 or 4 generations, I think he said.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, okay, yeah, I wanted to get out too, but then I got stuck here, and I wanted you to leave as well. For your own sake, you shouldn't be tied
Right.
down here. And it's because, you know, like, your mother went out, you feel guilty and want to stay for me.
Mm-hmm.
Mm,
Like, that's when, even if you dial that, just that focus in a little bit more, that I think would do better for the movie as a whole, but also specifically for the issues that both of you seem to have with that. Like, if I'm not like reading too far into it.
No, no, that's
no,
accurate
no.
because like I said, if I like the idea, but there was a somewhat better execution that could be had of it.
Mm.
Mm-hmm.
And
I think my narrative brain kind of took over a little bit and filled in those blanks.
that's absolutely fair. I think looking at it from a structural standpoint, it doesn't do a good job. There's so much space between the conversation between Austin and Emma and the conversation in the elevator that those two elements, which you're right, they are so very clearly tied together if you look at it from like a high altitude down. In the movie, I feel like you've completely forgot the conversation with Emma. At least I did by the time you get to the elevator scene, because things have gone not quality wise, but within the storyline, things have gone completely off the rails at that point. And
Interesting.
that's where I think the problem is.
I had rewatched parts of it, trying to because I thought I missed something.
Hmm.
I thought I missed a conversation between him and his dad or something because I paused the movie a few times, which
Right.
we'll get into the reason why in a minute. But I thought maybe I missed a conversation because I kept remembering the oh he's planning on leaving. And
Hmm.
so like I went back and I watched the office scene and I like again I expected it to be there, but it wasn't.
Yeah. No, for sure. So speaking about execution, that's probably a bad segue because it's not execution, but still.
Speaking about overanalyzing things.
Yes, the autopsy scenes. These are arguably the centerpiece of the film. Like, it's literally called The Autopsy of Jane Doe, so you'd better have a pretty good autopsy going on. I think if these scenes don't work, the movie doesn't work. Because you can have all the supernatural stuff, you can have the great depiction of the relationship between Austin and Tommy. If the autopsy scenes fall flat, that's a good portion of the movie. So, Elle, my question is, were these effective for you and how well do you think that they were pulled off?
Yeah, like coming from not exactly a medical background, but medicine adjacent.
And you've said your mom and your sister are both not morticians.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Like involved in that type of field.
Yeah.
Yeah, my mother's a retired nurse, and my sister is a currently serving paramedic.
Hmm.
Like some of my formative reading material was also like Patricia Cornwell, like
Mm.
the Kay Scarpetta novels, where it's like, yeah, no, it's just forensics happening.
Yep.
So this is like, yeah, no, that's it. All looks good. It looks like I was watching a surgery video, basically. And then I was comparing it actually to the bit of scenes that we got in The Thing, where it's like,
Hmm.
no, this is more authentically how this type of procedure would be carried out. Obviously, they're under a little bit more immediate stress in The Thing, and
Right.
maybe they're not quite up to code, but
Yep.
it also did feel like it was just, okay, have it play around in this guru and then react as it jumps up, versus, all right, here's the scene you need to set up. You're going for these sort of diagnoses, that type of thing.
Hmm.
So for being the centerpiece of the film, it's like, yeah, I think they nailed it.
Yeah. I will say on a tangent, because we certainly never do those.
Oh, never.
I have only read one Patricia Cornwell book in my life, and it was probably just that it was a bad one to start on because it was the Jack the Ripper book that she did.
Yeah, probably.
Because I've always had a fascination with that particular case, and I was like, oh, interesting. Let me read this. Well, this is garbage. Uh, I've heard good things about her beyond that, though.
Yeah, the Scarpetta series is like modern day, basic like police work.
Hmm.
Ironically, that was one of the fields I was looking into going into of my own studies. It's like, yeah, no, I
Oh,
could be a
really?
mortician. I'm not grossed out by any of that and all of that stuff. But I haven't got the brains to be into the medicine side of things.
In fairness, few people do.
Yeah, this is basically you are a doctor, except you don't need to care too much about keeping them alive.
Exactly. Like you still have to do like, as far as I'm aware, at least, you still have to be essentially a full-on doctor beyond,
Mm.
yeah, that part.
And yeah, I don't know what I have the brains for as a job, but it's certainly not that.
It's fair. Holly, how about you? How did the autopsy scenes play out? I'm guessing there might be some pausing here.
This was the pausing.
Yeah.
Big reason, and I don't mean to get really dark and depressing. I recently read the autopsy results on my mother,
Oh,
and there was a moment when I just had to stop it and I had to come back later because it got a little too intense. Now, they work very well,
right.
but just coming off of all of that, it got a little too intense for me.
That
Yeah,
is
it's like
entirely fair.
super effective in maybe one of the worst possible ways.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, for sure. Um, for my part, listen, I'm not super big into medical dramas or anything like that. I watched ER when I was younger, but beyond that, not really my thing. But I do love a little bit of surgical horror in my viewing habits. And I agree with you both. From a technical standpoint, this is exquisitely done. As particularly when you consider this was not a spendy movie. Like we don't know what the budget is. It was never actually released, but I cannot imagine that this movie costs more than $1 million, $2 million for the entire production budget, which is not a lot to make a movie.
Mm-hmm.
I think that, it's not the right term to use, but for lack of a better term for it, the gore looks very, very good. But for me, what really sold it was how it depicts the investigative aspects. Like, I've never seen an actual autopsy myself, but this feels very authentic. And the way that they run through the different stages from the external examination to the internal to the brain feels very accurate. Certainly a lot more than, I guess, the cinematic realism would be the best way, I think, to put it. Really sort of keeps those scenes compelling. And again, thanks to a big credit to Emil Hirsch, Brian Cox, obviously the production team, and it grounds the film in a really good way so that we're already sort of emotionally locked in at this point once things start getting supernatural and we start getting, for lack of a better term, and I'm not meaning this in a negative way, the more tropey stuff showing up. The radio playing and the bodies appearing in mirrors and shit like that. I do think I want to give a lot of credit to Olwen Kelly, who plays Jane Doe, because I think you can easily dismiss her performance. She's laying on a slab, but there are a lot of really, really subtle little nuances to the character that do a lot to sell the story. And
Mm-hmm.
I think there's absolutely a progression that Kelly is a big part of. the way Øvredal shoots it, and some of the lighting also plays into this as well. But when we first get her wheeled in there, and when we first see her half buried, all the way through to when they sort of start the autopsy, it's just a body. It is an object, for a lack of a better way to put it. And as it progresses, and as it makes its way through the autopsy, she becomes more and more of a person. And we start to sympathize with her more. And then we start to become fucking scared of her. That's all because of very small little expression changes that are very smartly covered by, well, we moved her head this way and now we've moved it back. And so narratively, it makes sense. That causes a shift in expression. But those are very specific acting choices that I think really make the last act much more complex because we're invested in Jane Doe by that point. And that's important because we need to get invested in the mystery of what happened to this character, because that's really essential if this film is going to work also. And I think, again, fun segue, Holly, how does the mystery, how do you find that works for you, and how effectively does that story play out?
Oh, very effectively, I would say. I mean, right away, I knew it wasn't going to be an easy answer. You know,
Right.
this was not, because for a while they were like, maybe it was like sex trafficking, and
Hmm.
no, it wasn't that. Like, there's definitely something supernatural happening, and you can tell looking at her. And the close-ups of her face did terrify me. Part of
Yep.
me expected her to just like jump off the table at some point, but I love that she didn't. I love the suspense there.
Yes. Like you're waiting for that jump scare of her to reach
Yes,
out or
her to
Start
move at
screaming.
all.
scream, move,
Mhm.
try to bite something, and it never happens.
But you can tell though, looking at the expression. I mean, when like again, I went back and watched some of it. You can
Hmm.
tell, especially scenes where they are like ripping apart her skin and stuff,
Yep.
and you can the expression on her, you can tell the pain there,
Yeah.
and it was just done beautifully.
I saw, it's on YouTube. There is a Q&A with Øvredal, Brian Cox, and Emil Hirsch. This was, I think, after like the first screening of it, but Øvredal talks about how it was important for him to film her like you would film an actor, like straight on, because
Hmm.
that allows you to think of her as a person and not just a cadaver. And I think it does a really good job with that. Elle, how well of a hook does the mystery play out for you?
I think I've been done dirty in this
Okay.
because you two have much more knowledge of the Americas than I do, and that's just plainly not fair and is a targeted call out to me specifically. Because it got its hooks in me and I was trying to solve the mystery, like, even as they're working through it, like, just in my own head, knowing just random bits of trivia and things. It's like, okay, well, this, that, and the other, like, trying to piece it all together. But then it's like, oh, it comes from somewhere in the Northeast. Like, okay, so like Utah or something. All right, that's because I'm like,
Yep.
okay, well, I know Seattle, Washington, I know like Oregon and everything. That's on the East Coast, the West Coast. So that's not that. All right, what's East? All right, so yeah, it's around there. Not Nevada. That's too far south. And just going through things like that. So when like the big reveal of, oh, Salem, Massachusetts, I'm like, oh yeah, shit.
Yep.
It's like I'm not playing with the full deck, and everyone else has like five aces up their sleeves. Like, come on.
Yeah, that is a little bit unfair. And I'm not gonna lie. Like Holly, I think it's pretty clear. Like you said, this is not just a human trafficking case. This is not just a body that was found under there. If
Hmm.
you've seen the trailer, if you've seen the tag,
If
anything,
if you've watched a horror film before in
yeah,
your life,
yeah, this is not going to be. Yeah, for sure.
I mean, even on my bingo card before I watched this, I had a satanic sacrifice as one of the squares, as like,
Mhm.
oh, it's probably not this. This is ridiculous. But maybe. But going into it knowing just the title and not having seen any trailers, not any promotional material, nothing until watching it for this, it's like, okay, it's the Autopsy of Jane Doe, and it is a horror film. Okay, let's throw out some random speculation. Let's swing for the fences.
Right.
So I wasn't too far off, I don't think.
No, you were at least in the same ballpark.
Hmm.
So for me, like I said, I like surgical horror, I guess would be the best way to describe it. There are some other examples of that, things like American Mary, and I would say arguably elements of the Saw movies kind of get into that too. But for me, immediately, yeah, the mystery is my hook into this movie. Opening up with this massacre at this seemingly normal suburban house, which I should say, one that stylistically could have absolutely been in the neighborhood where I grew up. I'm like, yes, yes, give me this. I want to know what's going on. And then from there, the way that this movie doles out the information through the autopsy is brilliant. Now, I will say, because of the clues, I think I probably caught on earlier to what was going on than the film wanted me to. I'm pagan. I know my
Mm-hmm.
history of witch persecution. So when I start hearing wounds that sound like medieval torture and charred lungs, I wonder how that could happen. Jimson weed. By the time they got to that piece of cloth, I was like pointing to the screen, witch.
So you had 7 or 8 aces up your sleeve, is what you're saying.
Kind of, yeah. And then when it gets to the reveal, and as Austin, it is Austin who is like putting the pieces together, I believe. The movie is treating it like a big reveal, like it's laying out the clues before it drops the W word. I'm like, baby, we already know. Like, catch up quick, cause she's gonna get you. Again, I don't think everybody is gonna catch on like that. And it's certainly not a flaw of the movie that it does that. That was just kind of my reaction because you cannot be a witch and not have at least a passing knowledge of verbalism, a little bit of awareness of what like Inquisition tactics were, and the value of the little ritual sachet, like that tooth in the cloth thing. So I imagine the reveal probably works better for people who aren't that immediately keyed in, but it still works for me. Outside of that, I loved how it plays out. I think that Tommy and Austin are very resourceful. They're not dumb doctors who just refuse to see the signs. There's like one moment where Emil Hirsch is like, "You're not accepting what you're seeing," but they get that out of the way quick. I think the mystery visually results in some really stunning moments. I'm talking specifically about the ritual seals under the skin. What the
Mm-hmm.
fuck? That's a moment that stays stuck in your brain for a while because you start to think, how would you even do that?
Subdural tattooing.
Yes, that said, in 1693, I don't know if that was as possible, but also the body healed itself up from everything else, so clearly it's all part of the ritual.
So, a genuine question then from me in the peanut gallery over here,
Hmm.
way down south. Do your curriculums at school cover the Salem witch trials, or is it independent study, let's say?
Oh God, no. Mine didn't anyways. There was a vague reference to it in my US history classes, but no.
Hmm.
We went straight from like discovering America and a little bit about Europe decimating the indigenous population, but then it pretty much goes straight to and then 1776. Well, no, the French and Indian War and some of that stuff. But we really quickly moved to 1776. We skip way over like the late 1600s and anything that might be kind of problematic.
Hmm.
I'll get off my soapbox now.
An entire semester was spent on the Salem witch trials for me. Do you know how many times I had to watch The Crucible and read The Crucible?
Wow.
No, it wasn't history though. It was literature.
Okay, no, that's
And
fair.
then we went into, ooh, I watched it like 3 times, the movie. And
Right.
then yeah, we read it, we did, and I mean, I'm also a theater person, so
Right.
then we read the play version of it, and then we talked about possibly putting it on, but yeah. So, yeah.
Well, and for sure, I do that. I like The Crucible. Obviously, it is a wonderful play production.
It wasn't just that though. We went into the actual witch
You went into
trials.
the whole
And
thing.
oh yes. Oh yeah, no, an
Wow.
entire semester. Because half of it was spent on the crucible, and then the other half was okay, now we are gonna look at the differences of what actually happened back there back then, between the play and actual history. And it was like I was in history
Wow.
class. Yeah. No,
See,
so
because
they yeah.
in Australian schools, your history basically starts in the 1800s or so, where it's like, yeah, there were some people here, but then the white settlers came and they built prison colonies and so on and so forth.
Hmm.
And then we do about 2 years of World War II, half of which is America centric,
Uh-huh.
because so vital to World War II in Europe and then sometimes in the Pacific just a little bit.
Right.
And then, yeah, so we don't get a lot of cross cultural stuff over
Yeah.
here, which is why I was wondering. It's like, okay, well, all of my stuff comes from pop culture and whatnot. Did you guys have a leg up in that?
Obviously, Holly did.
Mm,
Like I said, there was vague reference to it. I mostly, that was my own research.
yeah. And
But yeah,
this is why it's good to have people with different experiences and perspectives, because it's like you get these comparisons to make.
100%.
See, I'm from the South. The Salem witch trials are like child's play compared to all the slavery in history.
That is also really, really fair.
You want to talk about what they want to avoid in history class in the South.
That is super fair. That's like us in Oregon and our curriculum on the Native Americans here.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we don't talk about that very much. Uh,
I think we covered about a week of Aboriginal history. It's like, oh
hmm.
yeah, and then this one here is the last Aborigine in Tasmania. Let's talk about what happened to her. Nothing good.
And to be fair, in the South, you would probably want to teach about the Salem witch trials because that's something you can point at the North and say, "See, they're bad.
Oh, and they did
We're
too.
we're
God,
good.
yeah.
They're
Oh,
bad."
they're awful. I mean, okay, there was slavery, but they're free now. We didn't do this.
Look, everyone's equal now here. Now those witches, oh, I mean, you got to fill the time
Ah,
somehow. It's like what you got, what 12 years of school, ideally. So it's like, well, we've got to kill a year or so here. Let's talk about witch trials because God, we don't want to mention anything else. Ugh.
yeah. All right. So this is my favorite question that we're going to be covering in this. Something I really, really wanted to talk about. Elle, who do you think is the villain of this film? Because I feel like most people are going to assume there's one villain, and I'm curious if we agree. Spoiler alert, I do not.
So this is such an easy answer. I'm surprised that you might have any differing ideas on it. Just windmill slam Christianity.
I'm not going to go that expansive.
I mean, the
Um,
puritanical. It's probably
yes,
more Catholic or something at that point. I'm not sure. As I said, you guys probably know more of the history of that than I do. But it's whatever the
Puritanism, yeah.
yeah, whatever came over with the Pilgrims as religion is like. Yep, no, that's the villain of this piece.
That's where I'm at. I think most people, your average person who watches this, is going to call Jane Doe the villain. And I understand that. She is a supernatural entity. She is tormenting our protagonists, and they are undeniably the protagonists. She clearly caused the death of that family in the beginning. So they're going to say she's the monster and that she's the villain. I don't see her as a villain in any way, shape, or form. She is the primary antagonist because, again, she stands against the protagonists. But I call bullshit on the notion that she's a villain because she is the victim of a crime, not the crime that we think of at the beginning, not the one that the police think of, but the witch hunters and the, let's say, the religious zealotry that
Hmm.
that was perpetrated.
That's probably a more holistic way of saying it.
Religious zealotry can hit every religion. In this case, yes, is absolutely the Eurocentric Puritanism that came over. I have a read on this film. There's a moment in the film when Tommy suggests that she was a girl, just an innocent, I think is the word that he uses, who was created by the people of Salem when they tried to shut her down. And the implication is she's an innocent. She's not a witch. I'd argue she's a witch and she's innocent.
I agree. That's what I was thinking.
Yeah, some things can be many and more things.
Exactly. And then when those white wigged fuckers try to destroy her, they create a really bad situation that everybody who's going to have to deal with this body for the next 300 years plus has to deal with, which in itself is kind of an indictment of what religion can do. Let's talk about the Crusades. Let's talk about the witch trials. Let's talk about the Middle East, so on. I think a lot of that is kind of what this film is sort of approaching. At least that's what I am taking from the film. And I think there's another theme here in terms of, from what the film seems to suggest, she is inflicting her wounds on others so she can be restored. And by the end of the film, I think she's really close to that and perhaps even fully regenerated, thus the reason the bell rings at the end of the movie. Especially now that she has the paralytic Jimson weed out of her system. Strong implication to me is she can start moving around now. So for me, I know I mentioned back in our first episode that one of my favorite subgenres is the good for her film. This is almost the quintessential example of that, where we follow women who've been wronged, usually in a very traumatic way, and they decide to get what they want no matter the cost. I think Jane Doe 100% qualifies for this. She is a victim of the literal Salem trials. And you know what? If a bunch of religious assholes did that to me, I would have zero problem working my way through any number of people so I wasn't feeling that eternal torment. Sorry, Austin and Tommy. If it's them or me, they've got to go. That's just my take on it. And she's kind of the heroine of this movie in really strange ways. At the very least, the movie's kind of about her, I would say. Holly, what about, I mean, I think we've all kind of agreed at this point. Yes, we know who the villain is.
I mean, I would say so in terms of in the actual movie, people seen in the actual movie, there is not a villain.
I agree with that.
The villain is what was done to her, and I do agree, especially as I'm over here waving like I'm the resident Christian over here. Um, I do believe that she was a witch and she was innocent
Yeah.
because people freak out, and I do agree, especially old white men in positions
Yep.
of power freak out when there's a girl who has power
Mm-hmm.
or power that they cannot explain. So, albeit magical or not.
Yep.
So yeah, old English white dudes are the villain.
Are the villain, as as they should be considered in general.
Yes.
Well, what's that joke about Frankenstein? It's like, oh, the first level, it's like, oh, Frankenstein's the monster. Second level, no, the Frankenstein's the doctor, and the creature is something else. Third level, no, Frankenstein is the monster.
Yep.
It's like
100%.
reading it back. No, the doctor is the evil one here.
Yep. But yeah, and there was a, I can't remember where I ended up seeing it or hearing it. And whoever said this, I apologize for not referencing you. But there was a discussion about this film and how the opening up of Jane Doe and all of the wounds, seems fine on the outside, and inside she is covered in scars and wounds and all of this abuse is kind of a metaphor for how society treats women as a whole.
Mm-hmm.
And where you're just supposed to bear it. And no, fuck that. Inflict it back on the people who are doing it. Even, sure, Tommy and Austin didn't really know what they just thought they were cutting up. But still, somebody's got to pay. And sorry, you guys are closest. So yeah.
That even just reminds me of the lyrics of Blue Oyster Cult, the veteran of the Psychic Wars.
Okay.
I'm young enough to look at and far too old to see. All the scars are on the inside. I'm not sure that there's anything left of me.
Yep.
It's just like that's always hit home, like to me, fairly strongly, as someone who
Mm-hmm.
suffers with a multitude of mental illnesses. Just I'll rattle off the list at some point. But yeah, that statement about just fine on the outside, but like just really done up on the inside.
Mm-hmm. I was going to say, I think that is another absolute read that you can have of sort of the allegory of this film. Again, particularly if you tie in the plot element of the mother, is again this idea of we are fine on the outside, but inside we're severely hurting. I think there's a pretty good mental health read here, too. So now getting on to, I guess, the fun parts of the movie, aka the actual, all of that stuff is very scary too and disturbing and etc. But let's talk about the supernatural elements because that's fun. How do you guys how do you feel about the way the movie uses, no, it's we're in a single location, we're in a morgue, and we have all this supernatural stuff going on. How effective is that for you? How well does it use those elements within the narrative overall?
It's like a weird kind of white noise, I think. The idea being it's like it is so focused on very limited scope of area that it
Hmm.
allows the changes to stand out more.
Right.
So it's like at some point, if you're listening to like static, or I guess more accurately, the radio where it's not perfectly tuned to the station, for the amount of people that listen to the radio anymore,
Right.
your brain will eventually tune out that static and focus on everything else around.
Hmm.
So having it set in like the one room for most of it is like you filter that out because it starts becoming less relevant,
Right.
which allows you to then, focus in on any changes. So if something was happening in the background, you would be more likely to notice it rather than if you're going to all these different locations and, day, night, whatever.
Hmm.
It's like you are more likely to miss something if you have to take in more mental bandwidth.
Right.
So I like that's what I think it does really well in narrowing that scope.
Yep.
As I said, it allows you to tune out and tune in.
For sure. I think it's what you're describing. I like to call it sort of a Where's Waldo horror, by which I mean movies like a lot of found footage movies tend to do this, but particularly the paranormal activity films. I think do this a lot where you will have these sort of static scenes and you're just waiting for something to happen and you're looking for where's the thing that's changed? Where's the, yeah, I think this does that really well. Holly, how does the supernatural stuff play out for you and this setting?
I mean, fantastic in my opinion. I love that it's it's not overly complicated, and
Hmm.
it reminds me of like a haunted house type film where stuff is
Hmm.
happening, but it's a smaller space, and I think that works better. There aren't all of these rooms, and they don't even get outside. It's just a few rooms, a hallway, and I love one of my favorite moments, and I knew it was going to happen from the beginning, was when they hear the bell ringing
Hmm.
when they're in the office, and I sat there and I was like, I would start digging my way out of the wall at this point. I love using the elements of their surroundings, like the bells,
Mm-hmm.
the goodness, I can't even remember what these mirrors are called. The ones where you can
Yes,
like see around the corner. Yeah.
Convex or safety mirrors,
safety mirrors, yeah.
Right.
or
Okay.
or a
Yeah.
convex mirror.
Those are one of the most underutilized things in horror because they are inherently creepy because they're slightly distorted. And all you need to do is have somebody show up in one, and immediately you could be just in the grocery store and see somebody in one of those things, and it's already creepy.
Mhm.
You put it in a morgue
Oh yeah.
with with the lights flickering. Nope. Nope. Thank you, sir. No.
I do have one question. Just this is more story wise.
Mm-hmm.
So they're trying to get out through the elevator.
Right.
Is there not a staircase for emergencies like this?
It there is a staircase, but it only goes up to the storm cellar doors.
Correct.
Yes, and if all of this is happening and the elevator's not working, how did Emma get in there?
That is the so I have an answer for that.
Okay.
My answer for that is that Jane Doe was fucking with their perceptions, and I don't think the elevator never or was ever non-functioning.
Okay.
I don't think the storm was as bad as
As it
they
seems.
believe. I don't think they were trapped down there.
Because I mean, I had two theories on that, on either that, either
Hmm.
it wasn't that bad and that's how she got down, or that was never actually her and that was also an illusion.
That could be. I don't remember if at the very end, because at the end when the sheriff comes in, I know we see Austin. I think we see Tommy. I don't know if we
I
see Emma.
I don't think we see Emma at the end.
There's two bodies getting wheeled out in the regular body bags, and then they go to check on Jane Doe.
Yeah.
So she might
So we
not even
never.
be there.
Yeah, we never see her.
I mean, it is a little bit in passing, so it could have been that the third body bag had already been taken out.
Right.
True.
But there's also, and maybe this is not intentional, there's very little like evidence of storm damage. So there's
Hmm.
no tree that came down theoretically. Though
Right.
Mhm.
that could be maybe a slightly different camera angle, or it's like, well, they're not going to actively damage the set.
My belief is that they weren't blocked in because again, if we go back to the opening scene with the family that died in the house where Jane was unburied,
Mhm.
the police officer there, not the sheriff, but the woman who's talking to the sheriff, says it sounds like they were trying to break out
Yes.
of their own home.
Yeah. Yeah, so a similar situation happened.
Yeah, I think the strong implication is Jane Doe fucks with their heads and they think they can't get out, but they were able to leave the whole time. Like I assume that this part is kind of headcanon for me. I assume that the family that lived there were doing renovations in the basement, ended up digging up where Jane was buried, and her first action was to I'm out. There are people here that I can use to heal up some. Sorry, suburban family. And then she got transported to the Timpsons.
Mhm.
The movie happens, and then she's in the ambulance being taken away, and it looks like she can move.
Yes.
So I assume that she's just messing with everyone's perceptions.
Which then makes you wonder, what did she take from them?
On that element, I would not at all be surprised if she was not outwardly physically uninjured when she was dug up.
So kind of the like physical vitality, because
Yep,
otherwise it's like, oh yeah, you're obviously long dead.
right.
Mhm.
That's my guess. I mean, I don't know. Technically, they do explain that she is functionally immortal, but that would be my if I had to headcanon it.
Yeah,
That is what I would
Yeah.
say.
theory crafting is fun.
But yeah, for me, I love single location horror movies. I think that when it's done right, you have this incredibly effective way to make your film work without having to have a huge budget. If you see a good single location horror film, it's probably because they didn't have more than a couple million to spend on it. I'm thinking of things like the Evil Dead movies, the first and second one, the Paranormal Activity movies. There are a number of other really good single location horror films that, when you do it right, it can be really good. I think the key to that is you have to do a really good job of establishing that space because you're going to be spending 90 minutes to 2 hours in it. I think this movie does a really good job of laying out. You know exactly where everything is in this. You know where the elevator's in the middle of, or is at the end of the hallway. There's a staircase that leads up. You go down the hallway. Off to one side, that's where the office is. Off to the other side, that's where the storage is. Goes down. It turns. Then you've got the morgue room. And once you have all that stuff established, once your audience knows where all this stuff is, you can use it that much more effectively. If you don't lay it out like that, it's very easy to get confused, especially when you have a character that is screwing with people's perceptions like Jane Doe is. So I think it was essential that they did that, and they did a really good job with that. So when the supernatural stuff comes in, creepy bodies appearing in mirrors, the bodies coming out of the drawers, the radio playing, poor Stanley, all of that kind of stuff. Like, this is all basic tropey stuff. And again, I'm not meaning that in a bad way, but it works because we're so grounded in this story and we know where everything is and we understand the relationships with each other. You can make this really basic stock horror stuff play well as long as A, it's done effectively, and B, you've established all the other bona fides, including cinematography, which I think is really good, the music, which I think is really good. Oh, I know you had something you wanted to talk about with the music, I think.
Yeah, just like not the main song, the "Open Your Heart" one, but just the sort of the instrumental piano music that you hear throughout,
Hmm.
like mostly the opening and beginning scenes, because in the middle it starts to get a little bit more intense, but it's the
Right.
same leitmotif. It reminds me of, and this is going to be a real deep cut. There's a kids show from the 70s from England called Bagpuss.
Bagpuss.
Yeah,
That sounds like an English 70s kids show. Yep.
Oh, I've seen this before with the cat.
yeah. It's about a woman who owns an antique shop, brings something back to the shop, shows it to the the cloth cat toy that she keeps that is Bagpuss, and it gets a bit of an evaluation, and then that's the episode. But the music they use is some of the most cursed, god awful thing you could listen to, and it's no wonder that some kids went mad
That's amazing. Why does this stuffed cat look so sad?
because it's English.
That's why it's sad because it's English.
I mean, if you were British, wouldn't you be sad?
I'm just looking at, like,
Oh
I
god.
guess it's the DVD cover art. I don't know because it says the complete Bagpuss. So I'm assuming that it's a box set of something. And I just see the saddest looking stuffed cat you would ever see and a creepy doll.
Yep. And yeah, the music they use is like they must have never touched a piano before because they're doing it like one key at a time.
Oh
Bing,
no.
bing, bing, and yeah, it's just
That's
it.
terrifying.
It sounds cursed. Why would you have this for a kids show? But that it put me in the mind of that when I was watching the movie. It's like, oh, I'm having flashbacks. This is not good.
That's fair. In fairness, the UK considers Doctor Who to be a kids show. And I'm not saying that
No,
it's
it's
not
not.
mostly appropriate for kids.
It's not. They released the Sarah Jane Adventures. That's a kid show.
Yeah, but no, in the UK they 100% consider Doctor Who a kids show.
The original William Hartnell episodes, yes.
I would say not even that stuff.
Before they
Cybermen
introduced
are
the Daleks, because it was about his teaching history.
The Daleks appear in the second serial.
Yeah.
They appear 5 episodes in.
Mm-hmm.
Like
Because it was like, we need to do something for these ratings, or else we're cancelled before we even get there.
Yep. Like they are. You talk to people in England, and yeah, it is 100% a family show, and I'm like, this is a family show with robot space Nazis, the absolute body horror that is the Cybermen,
Also robot Nazis.
also robot Nazis, just a different type of robot Nazi. The Weeping Angels.
We're not sure on their politics.
If I showed this to my child, my eldest child, he would not sleep again.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I can understand how they might consider it something like what you described Bagpuss as being a kid's show. We can go back to Thomas and Thomas the Train too to bring that one back up. Anyways,
oh no, Thomas, you don't want to go to the other railway. They'll tear your head off and use it for spare parts. Wait, no, it's just their face, isn't it? Yeah. They just removed the face.
Yes.
Oh, that's fine then.
Because they turned one of them into a generator as a punishment.
Mm-hmm. They took his wheels off and hooked him up to a belt drive for a generator. They did the cask of Amontillado for another one because he was too afraid of getting his paint dirty. So it's like, cool, yep, we don't need this anymore. Block up the garage. Like brick the shed in.
I hate it so much.
Well, and then one of them got buried alive in a landslide, and they just didn't rescue him.
Mm-hmm.
They just didn't.
They're
too expensive.
He's still there to this day.
Wow.
Thomas thought he could drive himself, so he smashed into someone's wall, and all they could do is complain about their breakfast being ruined.
I need to write horror fanfic for Thomas. It's not hard.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, it sounds like you just write the synopsises of the episodes.
But it is objectively the better railway on the Isle of Sodor than the other one, because the other one does real fucked shit.
The other ones have higher mortality rates for their trains. This one, at least, most of the trains get the
God.
Yeah, they care for the trains and like look after them versus the other one where it's like, well, no, you were 2 minutes late, off with the face.
I just want to point out that you talked about the kids show that has varying mortality rates.
Yep. Yeah. My child used to love this show.
And don't even get me started on Super Ted.
Is that the little teddy bear?
Yeah, he's a space traveling superhero teddy bear.
Yeah.
Yeah, you don't want to go into it much further than that.
I don't know much about it other than he was a super bear.
All right. Well, before we will save that particular traumatic kids show for later. So let's do something that's doing for the first time with this episode. Let's get into some related recommendations. So, Elle, based on this film, what would you recommend if people like this film? What's a film that you would recommend that they would watch?
I guess it would depend on, what they're getting out of it.
Yeah.
If you like some of the supernatural elements of it, the Chilling Adventures of Sabrina, the TV series. If you like the medical side of things, honestly, the Patricia Cornwell, the Kay Scarpetta novels, or, and I just found this out, the upcoming TV series starring Nicole Kidman and Jamie Lee Curtis that literally just wrapped up this shooting of the first season the 8th of March this year.
Oh, wow.
So you have at least 2 seasons of that on the horizon if you're more of a visual learner than a book reader.
Nice.
Horror movies, I guess Saw.
I can see that.
That's all I got.
Cool. Holly, what about you? What would you recommend that for people who are like this particular one?
So the movie that comes to my mind as having some similarities, just like setting and jump scare wise, would
Mhm.
be 1408.
Ooh, I like that one.
I mean, I
I
have
can see
issues
it.
with the ending of it, but yeah, just the because he's also like in the room for most of it,
Mm-hmm.
and so like there are other locations, but it's mostly a one location
Yes, it is.
type movie. And yeah, again, the jump scares, the paranormal stuff is similar.
For sure. For mine, I really went back and forth a bit on this one because there are a couple of witchy films that I really wanted to really was considering. One of which is a Good for Her witch film that I think we might cover at some point. But ultimately, I think the one that I wanted to pick was it's another tale of how's a good way to put it? Men doing what men do and turning a woman into a supernatural force of revenge. And that would be The Grudge. And well, I think that Ju-on, the Japanese one, which is actually the third film in that franchise, well, I think that's probably the better film. I'm going with the American remake of it, which again it's Takashi Shimizu directing his own film. I think people generally know the story of The Grudge. American nurse living in Tokyo ends up visiting a house that is home to a supernatural curse. And I think I have more fun with The Grudge than with Ju-on, but it still fucks me up something really fierce. Kayako, the main antagonist of the movie, is one of the few characters I would say in the past 20 years to legitimately 100% give me nightmares. I think it would be a fantastic double bill with Autopsy of Jane Doe and The Grudge of feminine rage serving absolute justice, probably to the wrong people, but still good for her.
Would you include Carrie in that?
As a good for her film, yes.
Oh yeah.
Carrie is
But
100% a good for her film.
also the feminine revenge, also to people who might not necessarily deserve it.
That absolutely fits. I mean, just off the top of my head, there's Carrie, there is, like I said, this film, The Grudge, Jennifer's Body is another one.
Oh yeah.
What are some other good ones? The Witch. The Witch is absolutely one. Audition is one. Ready or Not, although I would argue that everybody in that movie that Samara Weaving's character deals with absolutely deserves what's coming to them.
I love that movie.
Oh, it's so good. I am so excited for the sequel.
Mm-hmm.
But yes, that, like I said, the Good for Her cinematic universe is one of my absolute favorite genres. Gone Girl, another perfect example.
Mm-hmm.
We're just building someone's weekend playlist here.
Yeah.
Yes. But yeah, in closing, final thoughts on the Autopsy of Jane Doe. Elle, what's your final assessment here?
I think I needed the space to rethink some things after watching it rather than the initial
Hmm.
reaction. So I am glad that I gave it a bit more time. But because I initially rated this as 3.5, so I will have to go back and I'll make it a 4 scalpel sharpenings out of 5.
That sounds accurate. That sounds legit. Holly, how about you?
I love this movie. I loved it so much. Right up my alley. There were a few things they could have done to, I think, improve on it some, but
Hmm.
overall, fantastic. Yeah, I'm gonna give it 4 creepy, soft ringing bells out of 5.
Nice. I also so when I rated it, when I initially reviewed it, I gave it a 3.5. My immediate reaction on the rewatch, I did also give it a 3.5 because I had a lot of the parts of the relationship between Tommy and Austin that we talked about that didn't necessarily work for me. Those were heavy in my head. I have talked myself, and while I was, sort of thinking through these questions, I have also talked myself up to, let's say it is 4 tooth satchels out of 5.
Ugh.
And if you need 4 tooth satchels, by the way, to keep your witch down, just give up. Probably jump off of a cliff because you've angered her enough that there's nowhere for you to go. You're not safe anymore. But yeah, that is the Autopsy of Jane Doe. So next few episodes are going to be a little bit more interesting.
I think this one was pretty interesting.
Oh, this one was
Oh, yeah.
very interesting.
I hope all of our episodes are interesting, actually. I'm going to go on the record and say that.
Fair enough.
At the same time, though, what we're about to get into is, I'm very excited.
I am too. And it's a little, I will say, a little different format wise. So we will be covering over the next 3 episodes the Fear Street trilogy, which we are all big fans of. And next month, Fear Street Prom Queen comes out on Netflix. So we will be covering the 3 films in the lead up to that, split over 2 episodes, and then we will be covering Fear Street Prom Queen itself. So I am super looking forward to this. I love the Fear Street trilogy, and I am incredibly excited for Prom Queen. I don't know
Same.
anything about this story,
This is
but
like the hottest off the presses episode that you're going to get, probably.
probably yes. But yeah, I'm really looking forward to it. So meanwhile, until we get to those, you can find us at whatever podcatcher you prefer.
And if you can, rate and review. If it lets you rate and review the episode, 5 stars is appreciated. But, you do you. We'll see every comment that you put. So at least make it grammatically correct, if not nice.
We are on Blue Sky and Instagram at Final Ghouls Pod. Meanwhile, you can find me at J Thomas for Romania on Blue Sky and Letterboxd.
I am at shards at kind.social on Mastodon and Shard System on Letterboxd.
And you can find me at Holly Culp on Blue Sky and Miniature Magic 18 on Instagram.
And you can find us all playing role-playing games at Final Show Films on Twitch and YouTube. And Elle, give us our horror book survival guide tip.
This episode's survival tip is avoid the following geographical locations: Amityville, Elm Street, Crystal Lake, Transylvania, Haddonfield, remote islands, lovers' lanes, abandoned asylums, carnivals and fairgrounds, secluded mountain resorts, and all small towns in the state of Maine. In fact, you may want to avoid New England altogether.